We start, as most things do, with pleasure. More specifically, hedonism, and one particular famous anti-hedonism argument that comes in the form of a thought experiment. A quick note before we start. Chances are you don't know what hedonism actually is, since there are some important differences between the colloquial since there are some important differences between the colloquial what is this word? Since there are some important differences between the
colloquial use
of the word hedonism and its original meaning. I made a video on that, you can find it in the description. But basically, some types of hedonism try to maximize pleasure and minimize pain now and in the future. So they regard future consequences in their hedonistic calculus. Now, the experience machine is an anti-hedonism thought experiment presented by philosopher Robert. And since we all have blissful lives to return to, I'll get right down to it. What? Your life is hilariously far from anything resembling bliss? Yeah, same. Alright, let's say there's this hypothetical machine that stimulates the user's brain in such a way that they experience pleasure. This is a hypothetical scenario, so let's say everything is perfect. The user is not aware that what they're experiencing is not real, and the pleasures come in whatever form the user prefers. This also includes the perfect setup for the specific pleasure. So for example, if the user wanted to be the best tennis player, they wouldn't just run over all the competition with no effort, as that wouldn't feel as good as trying hard and succeeding. Furthermore, let's say that everyone you care about would also plug into the machine and your alternate realities would be synced so you wouldn't be leaving them behind. Here is Robert Zinger. That's an official name, I just made it up. If you were given the choice, would you plug into that machine for life? Most people say that they wouldn't plug in because the pleasures induced by the machine wouldn't be real. That's why this thought experiment fights the hedonistic ideas. If people would deny the perfect hedonistic life because it's not real, then surely the hedonistic ideals that pleasure is the highest good are incorrect. Here is a list of reasons not to plug in that I nabbed from Wikipedia. First, we want to do things, not just have the experience of doing them. Second, we want to be a certain type of person, where the argument is that if we're just floating in a tank, we're not someone who goes in the gym 5 times a week, for example. 3. Plugging into a machine limits us to a man-made reality, the issue here being the depth of the simulation. 4. Lack of trust in machines due to previous technological failures. This list is not exhaustive, but some of the other objections are addressed with some of the additions I added to the thought experiment. To address point 4, the one where we might fear the machine misfires and our brain turns into fried eggs, since we're discussing a hypothetical scenario to explore a philosophical concept, I think we should create the best circumstances so that we can explore the thought experiment better. Meaning, we're not interested in whether people would plug into the experience machine, even though that's what we're asking. We're interested in whether pleasure truly is what we value more than anything else. If we decide not to plug into the machine because we're worried it may fail, that doesn't really tell us anything about the value of pleasure. Therefore, the machine can't fail. As for the first 3 points, I could argue that life is the perception of life, so those points don't really matter. Consider this. We know hallucinations are not real, and yet to those experiencing them, they absolutely are. And we're also aware of the concept of placebo. On the flip side, what if a 4th dimension really exists? Us humans are 3-dimensional creatures, so we do not see a 4th dimension, we do not experience it, we cannot interact with it. Would you say your life is diminished because you don't have access to the 4th dimension? I don't think so, because you've never had access to it and you don't know what it's like. And if you said your life is less without it, then ask yourself this: what if it doesn't exist? Then your feelings were not born of reality, but of your mind. The same argument can be used for the experience machine. If you said you wouldn't plug in, then consider this. What if you did plug in? What if all your life, with all the ups and downs and the people you love and the things you enjoy and everything you care about is not real? Would you plug out? Would you plug out knowing that whatever your reality outside is, you chose this life once already. That certainly changes things, doesn't it? This is called status quo bias. Basically, it means we generally want to keep things as they are. If you ever wanted to stop doing something bad for you but found it really hard to do so, such as quitting a bad job or leaving a toxic relationship, status quo bias is the reason. Probably. There could be other reasons too. From what I managed to find online, this is pretty much where the argument stands right now. However, my finite and very limited cognitive capabilities managed to conjure two other things to consider. First, if the experience machine induces pleasure and we want to test that against the hedonistic moral proposition, then shouldn't we change the thought experiment to a non-permanent version? Meaning, where the original question is, would you plug into the machine for life? What if we just let you plug in and out as you please and observe the results? That way, we have guaranteed easy to obtain pleasure at your fingertips to be taken whenever you like and for as long as you like. In a way, that eliminates the status quo bias, doesn't it? What would happen then? I don't think you need to answer that question. We already know. In a way, we already have an experience machine. Did that pique your interest? You must be Gen Z, so. We have video games, we have anime, we have TikTok and YouTube and Netflix and Hub for something loosely related to love and whatever else people lose themselves in for hours on end. There's an epidemic of people checking out of society and retreating to weed and video games or some such in Western society. And that's not even the experience machine from the thought experiment. It's an infinitely inferior version. On that note, however, from what I've heard, modern people who retreat into digital spaces often still long for non-digital experiences. They're just inept at getting them. I should really get a dog. To my knowledge, those who manage to transition from digital to non-digital existence prefer real-life experiences and sometimes quit their digital hobbies altogether. However, an argument can be made that the reason for that is because the current digital machine does not adequately provide the necessary brain chemicals to induce proper happiness. Thus, people actually suffer being deprived of those, oxytocin and what have you. There's a lot I can say on that subject, but this is not the video for that. The situation would be entirely different if the hypothetical machine from the original argument was made real, which is the second thing to consider, although you can say it's just a rephrasing of the first thing. Given what I just said, would it be far-fetched to assume once we get high quality VR or even some fake Neuralink reality fed directly into our brains, that a lot of people would not simply retreat into it as they already retreat into lower quality digital experiences? I think it's a realistic possibility. So, to bring us back to base, I don't think the experience machine thought experiment really proves anything when it comes to hedonism. As the counter-arguments and other hypothetical unreal situations suggest, a lot of people would choose to use the machine to induce pleasure. Both of those kind of miss the point of the hedonism discussion in my opinion though. Hedonism is an ethical theory which claims that pleasure is the highest good and proper aim in human life. The experience machine thought experiment does not in any way clarify whether pleasure is the highest good, nor does it make an argument against it, and it certainly doesn't help us figure out if chasing pleasure is the only moral way to go about life. You can watch my video where I discuss prudential hedonism here, or you can watch me tackle another of the anti-hedonism thought experiments dubbed The Deceived Businessman here. And, of course, if I missed something, or presented something wrong, or some of my conclusions are wrong, etc, there is the comment section. Alright, bye, thanks, bye, subscribe, bye.